Welcome to this explainer on monitoring costing systems. Think of this as the ultimate financial health check for your complex construction projects. When we're managing a massive build, the bricks, mortar, and steel, that's really only half the story. The other half, and honestly the half that usually decides whether a project thrives or completely fails, is the financial architecture holding it all together. So today, we're going to look at exactly how to keep that financial structure from crumbling by mastering the art of monitoring and maintaining expenditure. And for our Genesis International College students tuning in, consider this your authoritative study guide for mastering Unit CPCCBC5002. Specifically, we're doing a comprehensive summary of Topic 4, Monitor and Maintain Expenditure. So, whether you're prepping for assessments or getting ready to step onto a real-world site as a senior manager, the principles we're unpacking today are exactly what you'll need to keep your projects viable and, just as importantly, compliant. Here's our agenda for today. 1. Introduction to project expenditure. 2. Monitoring daily cash flow. 3. Budget versus actual costs. 4. Managing cost variations. And 5. Improving financial position. Okay, Part 1. Introduction to project expenditure, protecting the risk reserves. Let's start by looking at why keeping a strict eye on expenditure is basically the life support system of any successful build. In complex construction, margins can be incredibly tight, right? And the variables are nearly endless. Literally, one bad week of unmonitored spending can throw the entire schedule into absolute chaos. As a project manager, your paramount role is to monitor and maintain expenditure to ensure we never, ever deplete our risk reserves or halt site operations. Those risk reserves are there for genuine, unavoidable emergencies. They are not a slush fund for careless daily spending. The source material is crystal clear on this. Monitoring expenditure is absolutely crucial to prevent exceeding those reserves and incurring unallowable costs. Your ultimate goal? Ensure the contracts remain strictly on budget. Because if you aren't watching the numbers, those unallowable costs will silently drain your project's lifeblood. Moving on to Part 2, monitoring daily cash flow, checking the vitals. Look, you wouldn't wait until the end of the year to check if a patient has a pulse, right? Well, you shouldn't wait until the end of a project to check your finances. Daily monitoring is the standard here. Now, we've got to clearly separate cash flow, which is the overall money moving in and out of the business, from creditor payments, which are the specific bills we owe to our suppliers. Cash flow is the big picture. It's total receipts coming in, total disbursements going out. Creditor payments are highly specific. That's the balance you owe for those concrete deliveries last Tuesday or the scaffolding you rented. And to verify those payments accurately, you're often going to need to consult with different cost center managers or department heads. To perform a proper financial health check on-site, you need to analyze some specific categories of financial ratios. The guide outlines that understanding financial health requires looking at sales calculations, profit ratios, and liquidity ratios. These aren't just dry numbers for the accounting department, they are literal vital signs for you, the project manager. A liquidity ratio, for example, tells you immediately if you actually have enough cash on hand to cover your short-term creditor payments without having to dip into a really costly overdraft. Part 3. Budget versus actual costs, diagnosing the discrepancies. Now this is where theory meets reality on the site. It is vital to compare your initial network budget costs directly against your actual costs in the tender calculations to find any variances. Think of the network budget as your ideal scenario. It's what you mapped out during planning. But the actual costs, that's what the market is dictating right now. By placing these two figures side by side, you instantly spot the variation. Are materials suddenly costing 10% more than tendered? Is labor finishing 5% faster? This comparison is the diagnostic tool that reveals the absolute truth of your project's financial trajectory. And when you do spot a variation, you have to follow a set of organizational steps to communicate that anomaly to the financial controller and stakeholders. You don't just fire off a panicked email. First, identify the variation and gather all your supporting data. Second, clearly describe its origin. Was it a weather delay, a supplier price hike? Third, specify the exact impact this is going to have on the project. Fourth, outline step-by-step the action taken to handle it. And finally, be proactive. Suggest how future projects could prevent this from happening again. Honestly, this kind of structured communication is exactly what separates a novice from a senior manager. Which brings us to Part 4, managing cost variations, preventing the flat line. Because recognizing a variance is really only half the battle. Managing it is what keeps the project alive. There's a harsh operational truth here. Unpaid creditors can result in risks in quality and time. It's a total domino effect. If your cash flow monitoring fails and you can't pay your suppliers, well, they stop delivering. When materials stop arriving, your timeline blows out. And when crews are rushed or forced to use subpar alternative materials because the primary supplier cut you off, quality absolutely plummets. Daily monitoring of those creditor payments is what ensures this fatal scenario never happens. So where do these dangerous variations come from? They typically originate from fluctuating variable costs, like a sudden spike in raw materials, or shifting cost drivers, like unexpected overtime pay. Now, unlike fixed costs, which are things like equipment leases that stay the exact same regardless of activity, variable costs fluctuate based on volume or external market forces. The cost drivers are the specific factors actually causing that cost incurrence. For example, if a client issues multiple change orders, those change orders are the driver that forces you to increase work hours, which in turn spikes your variable labor costs. Understanding this relationship helps you anticipate financial turbulence way before it hits. And finally, part 5, improving financial position, prescribing the remedies. Spotting problems is great, but as project leaders, we're expected to provide solutions. Improving your financial position is a two-pronged approach. It requires both accurate number crunching with your invoices and active communication during team meetings. You absolutely must track your cash flow relentlessly. That means preparing and updating cash flow status reports, monitoring bank statements, and preparing formal statements of cash flows. But, numbers on a spreadsheet don't fix themselves. You need to gather your team, consult with your cost center managers, and strategically plan how to navigate the financial data you've just uncovered. One very practical remedy outlined in your study guide is physically rearranging your expenses to improve liquidity. You can do this by breaking down massive bills into periodic payments or timing material purchases to align perfectly with cash inflows. If a massive invoice hits your desk, don't just drain your cash reserves to zero. Negotiate to pay it in smaller, periodic installments. And further, never schedule massive material purchases during a week when you know client payments haven't cleared yet. If you align the purchasing schedule exactly with the cash inflows, you ensure you always have a healthy cash buffer, and that completely avoids the need for expensive overdrafts. So as you step into your next simulated or real-world build for Genesis International College, I want to leave you with this question. How will you apply these health checks to ensure your construction contracts never exceed their budgets? We've explored the critical difference between cash flow and creditor payments, the exact steps to manage cost variations, and powerful strategies like rearranging expenses to maintain liquidity. Ultimately, the financial health of your project is entirely in your hands. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I look forward to exploring more essential concepts with you next time.